Hello here, and welcome again to another edition of the HuskerOnline Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett, Sip and I back from Texas. Got back this morning. It was a quick turn. We were working till about midnight, Sip in the lounge inside the Marriott in Houston's airport.
Not the lounge. It was like a work area.
Yeah, like a business lounge. Like
you guys were at the bar.
Yeah. We were
no, it was
ripping margs.
It was Rice Krispie treats, cookies, Chex Mix, water, and a fountain soda machine.
Oh, and they had these fabulous, what are those chocolate chip bars? They're like chocolate chip bars.
Yeah, they had.
I ripped like 4 down right away.
But it was fat. I mean, it's a room with free food, and we're trying to write the satellite camp coverage. And the amount of people when there's free just come in and out, they're looking like we're intense. Like Sip and I, when we're working, I mean, it's people are like, what are these guys doing? Like,
I've seen it.
Yeah.
So
I'm still sweaty. Can you see the sweat on?
But yeah,
How
it was
come
a
you're
quick
not
turn.
sweaty? You look way better than me.
Well, I showered.
Oh,
that's a big part.
That's
Yeah.
one thing.
But we're back from Texas, and it was quite a trip. And we're going to talk about that in the opening 3 segments, just different things we learned because we were with Coach Rhule, 7 of his assistant coaches, all throughout the week. I mean, we had direct interaction, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. There's a big visitor weekend. Offers were made. But yeah, I want to start really with one of the bigger things we learned from Matt Rhule, and we talked briefly in our YouTube piece last night, Sip, about this from Houston, but Nebraska is going to open fall camp in the dorms for 12 days. The players will report July 30th, and the 31st is the first practice. And then for about 2 weeks, the team will live in the Selleck dorm building, which is the oldest dorm complex on city campus. Steps from the Union. It's an old school approach. I've talked to some players from the 90s and whatnot. They never did that under Osborne either. So this is, I think you got to go pre-Navani the last time Nebraska housed their team, over that entire period for a fall camp. And let me tell you, the reception from Husker fans has been pretty excited. This is cool. I like this idea by Matt Rhule.
Yeah, Rhule, of course, you talked to him and he was surprised by kind of the hubbub over it. Like, why is this?
What's the big deal?
Now, he'll learn that things like that sort of angle that's fresh and unique, that gets a lot of attention. And I think it is significant. I mean, it's a significant development that no coach has done that in our lifetime, right? Well, at least not in our working lifetime. And it's a team bonding thing. I guess the thing is, Sean, it makes a lot of sense under the circumstances. And the big thing is the coaches. The coaches are going to be there for 12 days. These grown men, these 40 and 50-year-old guys are going to be sleeping in little dorm beds. But again, there's a purpose behind it, and that's getting this team together.
And it'll be interesting how the guys respond. I mean, a lot of these guys have probably never done something like that where, it's like going to summer camp. When you were a kid, you'd go home. I'd go away to a camp for a week and live in a dorm. Kids don't really do that anymore. They don't, go somewhere and stay for a week, probably unplug all their technology for the most
I don't know
part.
if they'll have to. Will they have to unplug their technology?
I mean, I'm sure
They might. I'm not saying
they're not going to bring it into me. I mean, there's going to be some probably personal time, but there's going to be no girlfriends. There's going to be,
unless they sneak in.
I joked to somebody today, probably the most popular week will be sorority rush week. Because the Selleck dorm building will have probably the best view of sorority rush when it's going on campus. That
Robin,
week.
let's see what Robin thinks.
Okay. So I was never smart enough to stay in Selleck. So
So that's the honor. You're thinking Nyhart.
Oh,
Selleck was the international dorm.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah,
Remember the thrower Carl?
That doesn't
Myers
work
call?
either.
didn't apply for that either. No.
I mean, it was like where a lot of the Asian students live, the international students live.
Yeah. So I don't know how nice those are compared to I live in Schramm, and Schramm was like, when you think of just like a cruddy old dorm, that's what it was. Like, do we know the difference between Selleck and like Harper Schramm Smith?
Oh, I mean, I hate to. It looks old. I mean, it looks like a project or something. It's
easy.
It's easy. It's not like it's an old building.
Okay. So it's not like one of the new
No.
suites.
No,
Okay.
it's
All right.
not.
It's possible it's been updated, and we just don't know.
Abby's
it.
actually like gone to school within the last
Right.
10 years here. And she says
about
she gives
20?
a thumbs down. So,
Yeah.
okay. So that, I mean, I think is telling. It's not like they're putting them in like the real, like the 3-room suites with like a kitchen and all that sort of stuff. Like this is actual dorm life. And one of the questions was like,
Barracks.
there's the players' perspective, but the coaches staying in there as well. Did you guys kind of get a vibe for like how they're reacting to that?
Yeah.
These 6-figure,
Well,
high major
seven-
assistant to
How about
7-figure coaches
Satterfield 7? Yeah.
staying in a dorm room.
Yeah, I asked Marcus Satterfield about it. He's a guy who's kind of hard to read, and he said I'm excited about it. I said, "Are you really?" And he said, "I am." He did seem genuinely excited by it, but I think it's more, Robin. When you cover a coach like this in Fred Hoiberg, it's more of a practical thing. Like it is a team building.
Mhm.
So the comfort thing's sort of secondary. We have a job to do. We have to get this team together. We're a new staff. We have to bond with this team. So we're going to do that. We're going to do this. It's not comfortable, but that team bonding element supersedes everything else, and it could be kind of fun,
Yeah.
But the one thing I want to add, and you guys have been around these camps for years, these August camps, preseason camps. It's intense. It's one of the most intense times in, like I say, sports. I mean, that I've covered in my life. August can be really hard for guys.
It's the only time you get unlimited time. Once school starts,
only the time coaches get unlimited time, right?
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
Unlimited time.
Yeah.
So when school starts, you have the 20-hour week. Right now in the summer, they get 8 hours a week.
Okay.
During fall camp, they get unlimited hours a week. So what they're doing is we're going to get you for 16 hours a day.
Whoa. Yeah.
And we're going to
14.
Well,
but I get you. No, I get what
you
you're
get what I'm
saying.
saying. Like we're going to maximize.
Yeah.
When you wake up and when you go to bed, other than that, you're ours. And we're going to build this team this way. The only other team I've heard locally do something like that. Remember Pat Burns, the old UNO coach?
I do.
He used to take his team to Elkhorn Mount Michael.
Is that right?
And that's an isolated place. They have dorms there. And I know they ran some camps there, if I'm not mistaken. And if somebody in our YouTube comments wants to chime in, I don't know how many former Maverick football player listeners we have. But,
I'm sure we have some.
but I want to say they used to do that. But you've heard teams like Arizona State. You can't practice in Tempe outside in August. So like that was a team I know that would go away in the mountains.
Well, and Rhule pointed out it's common in the pros, in the NFL.
Well, the Chiefs used to go to River Falls, Wisconsin.
Chiefs go up to Wisconsin. That's a good example. But there's other teams that do it too.
And the media would stay in the dorms.
Right. I did think it was sort of funny that Rhule said, I don't know what the big deal is. He's going to learn that. Parker Gabriel's one who always used to say the words to writers at the Journal-Star: no angle too small. When you're covering Nebraska football, no angle too small.
100%.
Yeah. And this is actually a pretty significant one that just popped up organically at a stadium at Mary Hardin Baylor in Belton, Texas. Did I get that right? Belton.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of our page views on that story. It's far and away the most viewed story we've had in the last few months. Yeah. I mean,
Rob, we got to step it up.
Rob, sorry guys.
That's a Sean Callahan byline.
Absolutely. I mean,
damn it,
he's running laps at this point.
Yeah, look at him.
Well, I mean, it's just
no wonder he's so. Bubbly.
I made it free, and it wasn't a premium link, so that I stole like the great Steve Sipple is premium. You gotta pay to read Steve Sipple.
I prefer that you refer to me as the great Steve Sipple.
So there was another question on the topic of fall camps being held elsewhere. Like how they do in the NFL. That would never happen at Nebraska, obviously, logistically. Like there's just too much.
Well, it did happen in the 50s.
Okay.
They used to go to Curtis.
It's a much different animal.
They used to go to Curtis, Nebraska.
Crazy.
Where the agriculture college is for the university, and it was called Camp Curtis. And they would just beat the living tar out of the team to the point where
there are no hour rules.
Like Bobby
Junction Boys style.
Yeah, and Bobby Reynolds, who was the first Heisman finalist in Nebraska's history, essentially he suffered like a career-ending injury in Camp Curtis. So, I mean, Bobby Reynolds held a record for points per game that till Reggie Bush broke his record. That's how long he was a great player at Nebraska. A training camp like that away from campus, like essentially ended his career. He never really was the same player after the injuries he suffered that fall camp.
Yeah, but regarding Robin's point, it would be really be difficult logistically to pull
weights.
Yeah, just all the equipment, the
recovery,
nutrition, the training tables, stuff like that. Like, there's just a lot. But I thought it'd be interesting, like thinking of hypothetical destinations for where they could do that.
Where would that be
in the state? Because there's not a lot of
well, the small colleges are already having their own.
That's what I'm saying. Like all like the facilities that would be good enough are going to be being used by those schools.
That's why like Elkhorn Mount Michael made sense because it's isolated as dorms and it's got fields.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't have a good answer for that, Rob.
Maybe like one of those big high schools in Omaha or something.
Yeah, you got to have dorms though.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, no, it'd be hard to pull off.
So long story short, it ain't happening.
All right, when we come back, we're going to give more from what we learned this week in Texas, some more team nuggets and notes. That's next. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. And we're back here on the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett, continuing our discussion from Texas. Sip and Robin, I thought it was interesting too just to see Matt Rhule in action this week. Just watching him make offers live on the field, watching these coaches interact, coach. And that's what Evan Cooper said to me. He goes, the most fun I have is this coaching. Like, he goes, we haven't coached in spring ball and just being out here coaching and developing young kids. It's a lot of fun. And the one thing about the staff is they are not afraid, and we'll get into this in the recruiting segment, to pull the trigger on a guy that may not have other offers. I mean, they have a certain profile they're looking for, and if they see it, they don't hesitate.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, when you go to a camp like this, it's very striking. This is their livelihoods. They have to find players. There's a mass of players. There was 300 players at the camp in Houston, the Houston satellite camp. And it's, we can hang back and miss a guy. Doesn't matter. You have these massive players. Well, a lot of them look pretty good, but you got to pick out the real good ones. They're not wearing name tags. They're not wearing numbers. So it's work. That's what I'm getting at here. It's work. And they were working. I mean, Rhule's time in 40s. He hangs back and watches kind of the big picture, and the other guys kind of go in and get their hands a little dirtier, although Rhule does too. So, yeah, I mean, I just enjoyed watching him work. And I think that part, listen, I'm not going to get into this thing where we say, well, Rhule works harder than all of the Nebraska coaches that have come down the pike. I don't know about that. Those guys had to work, Bo and Riley.
It's how you work.
Yeah, it's kind of how you work. And he's he is very intentional. And I've never seen I've never seen a head coach work his phone like Rhule. I mean, he is always doing something on his phone. He puts notes into it. I know he's I don't know. He just works the phone really well, and he's made mention of that too. That he's a phone guy.
Well, I mean, the few times I've had to interact with him, I'll just put it this way: a lot of times the head coach may not ever respond to you, or it could be hours, days. Mm-hmm. His responses are seconds, minutes. I mean,
I think he is like that.
I mean, he's very plugged in. When he's plugged in, he's plugged in.
Yeah, he was plugged in at this, and let's see how it is. I got to do this. I mean, you have to do this with new coaches. Will he be this way, for instance, with us in year 2 or year 3? Like where he just walked up to us the other day and said, "Hey, I know you guys are always looking for talking points. Here's one."
Story idea for you.
Well, thank you very much.
So you're saying your Sunday morning columns might change his tone during the season?
Well, you don't always get that. Right. I mean, you don't always get that from a head coach. I doubt he always gets that from John Cook. You just don't get that very often. I know you guys are always looking for things to talk about. Here's a couple of examples. So that was very refreshing.
So with Rhule, we've heard a lot about that part of him and his work ethic and just how much of a grinder he is. And
yes, it's true.
But what I want to know is in that setting, we saw a little bit of it in the spring in the brief glimpses we got of spring ball practices. But the rest of the staff, I mean, it seems like everyone is kind of built like that and kind of follows that same grinder mentality. In that setting, did that come off?
Yeah, they're not all the same because people aren't all the same. But yeah, Rob, it definitely does. And Cooper, I mean, you do notice
McGuire.
Yeah. But Cooper, like, it's kind of like Cooper does. You could literally see Cooper looking at guys, analyzing guys, then reporting to Rhule. I mean, I saw it at least once or twice.
Like his level of trust in Evan Cooper
is high.
Yeah.
Like, and it comes.
That's one of the things he said from day one.
From day
Matt Rhule said about Cooper.
And
defensive, and you do see it.
And as far as defensive back recruiting goes, like if you don't fit the profile that he's looking for,
Evan Cooper, which is what?
Long, rangy, athletic, track times, film, a guy that they can build up. Like, then they're not going to go out. I mean,
generally not. I think there's exceptions. Like, I think Malcolm Hartzog is not one of their recruits, but he's an example of an exception to the rule, right?
He's Mr. Mississippi in football,
right? And I could see them. I don't know. You wonder a little bit. I guess, would they recruit Malcolm Hartzog? I don't know. I guarantee you there's exceptions. You could probably find him on their own roster.
Like last night, every guy that they offered and pulled out was 6'4", 6'5", and had verified track times, whether it was a 10.6 or a 48 or a 49 in the 400 meter. I mean, legit marks.
How much do you think in a camp like that, one of the things the staff is becoming so well known for is seeing long-term potential at different positions and seeing what a guy will be in 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, obviously you're not in the conversations with these guys, but do you get a sense that, Kai's working with the tight ends or whatever it may be, but like, how much do you think that they're evaluating the intangibles, the speed, about what they might project to be at the next level down the road in a few seasons?
I think you do that with about everybody, right? But there's some that are more. I think what you're getting at, Rob, is there's some players that are less obvious than others that that you point at them and say, it's not readily apparent, but look at this, and this, and it could work. Is that what you'd say?
Well, there's things you can't coach: height, length,
for sure,
track time, speed. I mean,
arm length. For
like
sure.
A guy can come to you with 11.2 speed. You're not going to make him 10.6, but a guy that's 6'5" that runs 10.6, you can do something like And we saw that trend immediately play out with the staff and recruiting. Bryce Turner, Jalen Lloyd, they go in off of these guys. Eric Fields, Jeremiah Charles, a 50-foot triple jumper. They immediately, look at those marks because, like, if you have that type of verified explosion in speed, we feel like if we develop you, we can make you great.
Yeah, good examples, right? Is the kid? I mean, we might as well just name him Braylon Prude, the kid from Pearland, Texas.
He's coming on an official visit, and we'll talk about him more in our next segment in the recruiting. But June 16th, he's coming. But yeah, Braylon Prude, 6'5",
190,
and he's a 48 in the 400.
49.86, which is good. Big, long kid. But yeah, and that Van Keith Brown too. I mean,
Van Keith Brown was a 48.
Yeah, that's right. Van Keith Brown's from Katy, Texas, and he popped at me and Sean. We were watching the workouts. He's Robin, he's 6'5", 190 receiver. He just stood out. I mean, I wasn't surprised when I saw Garrett McGuire locked in hard on him. And then he goes over to Rhule, and then it kind of sets everything in motion.
It was kind of funny to see, like, Rhule, they kind of consult. You see it happening. We're kind of at a distance, and they want to offer a guy, and Rhule's like, I want to offer this guy. Bring him over. And like,
what was that scene? Who was that with? Was that with
it was with Cooper, or it was with Van Keith.
Okay.
No, it was with Prude. And I think Cooper was like, I'll offer him. And I think Rhule's like, no, I'll offer him. I want to be the guy involved in this offer.
Yeah.
And Rhule was really big. He told me this. He goes, when we go out here, we want to make sure we visibly make an offer at every one of these camps, because then more kids will come if they know you're going to offer. Mm-hmm. And so they made one offer in the first one and three in the second one. And there might be more that comes out of that second camp.
Yeah. And here's the deal, guys. Spark Dog, I think, made a post on the board, which was really good. See, what happens is fans see this level of effort, this work ethic. They go down. These guys go down to Texas. They hear Matt Rhule, how well he's presents himself to fans, to media, to everybody, and it'll help him I don't want to say buy time, but people will be more patient with him. because they know he's working. They know that they're doing all they can, and they are. Now I'm convinced of that. I don't mind saying that. I don't like to get into the comparisons of head coaches' work ethic. Those guys, they make millions of dollars. Of course, they work hard. Now, some work harder than others. There's no doubt about that. And Rhule, I can say, is at the high end of it. But people do notice what he's doing, and I do think I think there'll be more patience. I mean, this is not going to be easy for him. And I think what he's doing, I don't think he's doing it intentionally for that reason, but I think it will lead to more patience.
It all seems like the groundwork for kind of the long-term build.
Yes.
Like stuff like this is the foundation of what they want this.
That's exactly.
They're going to be down there every year.
Rob, that's exactly right.
Like this satellite camp trip, I mean, I think they're going to do a couple of days there every year.
Yeah.
That's the plan. With coaches' clinics worked around it. And we'll carry that over our next segment. When we come back, we'll hit on more recruiting nuggets and news that's happening this week for Nebraska. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. And we're back here on the Husker Online Show. Before we get into some more recruiting talk, Sip, what do you got for us?
This segment sponsored by Larson Motors in Nebraska City. Really quick trip down Highway 2. Chevrolet, GMC, Ford, Dodge, Jeep, Ram. Probably get a pretty good truck there.
You're a truck guy.
Yeah, I am a truck guy, and I'm sort of in the market. So it's probably a trip I'm going to be making here pretty soon. Larson Motors, Nebraska City. Try it out.
All right. Proud sponsor here. This segment with Steve Sipple and Robin Washington and I here on the Husker Online Show. But let's talk recruiting now for Nebraska. They had a big weekend. 9 official visitors come in. I think we're going to get some commits that come out of this weekend. We're taping on Wednesday. We expect some things to happen here as the week moves on. But I think in general, this big picture, things are going to move quick. Like the numbers are going to really start to move with this recruiting class. I know they had 9 visitors last weekend.
They felt good about it.
I think they're going to get at least 5 of the 9, in my opinion. Yeah. And I think they could get close to all 9. I mean, that's what's interesting.
Yeah. The staff felt, they can't obviously talk about individuals, but they felt very good coming out of that weekend. But you know what? They need to start. There needs to be some movement now. So yeah, that was good. And I think they got some momentum out of Texas too.
And you look at, Caleb Pyfrom's a local guy from Omaha.
Okay.
That's somebody that I'm watching. I think he's got to kind of make his decision though in June. I don't know if his spot would be held. So he's a guy to watch, this month in the coming weeks. Cause as for Nebraska, I think there's a deadline there, but Daniel Kalen and him have a good relationship. And I think Daniel Kalen has been kind of the X factor. Having his presence around these weekends has made a big difference.
He jumped in. He said he would. He was very intentional that way, and he's around a lot already. And that's the way it should be with I'm going to say high-profile quarterback. He's high-profile enough to get that Elite 11 national invite. You got it. That quarterback position, there's a lot that goes with it. It's hard to be an introvert, at that position. You can be. It's hard, right? There's probably some
be really good.
Yeah. so at the college level, it would be really hard because you got to be involved in recruiting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Nebraska really hasn't had a lot of, good quarterbacks that weren't great leaders.
Right. It's hard. Come on. That position is a leadership position, so you got to have guys.
Program.
And yeah, exactly. And what I've seen from Kalen is he does embrace that. And you know what, that at Elite 11, they have, that's part of their teaching. They teach those kids the impact they have on other people and the impact they have on their teammates and why it's such a big job. It's not just an X's and O's, completion percentage, interceptions. It's the impact you have on your school, your community. People remember their interactions with you. That's a lot. It always seems like a lot to me for a kid.
I would make the case that now is probably the greatest responsibility on high school quarterback, especially commits, for peer recruiting in the era of social media and the amount of work they have to do to tweet at all the players, and come on visits when they're not even, they're there to help out recruit. They're just basically to help the staff
that's a great
recruit.
point.
And so the workload just in that regard for a guy like Kalen compared to previous quarterbacks before him, before social media became what it was, I think is greater than ever.
Yeah, I do. And it's fitting that they're paid now. It is.
It really
It's
is.
fitting.
It's a
fitting.
job.
Yeah.
As far as other things to watch recruiting wise, obviously Mario Buford's one. I've got my RPM for him to Nebraska.
You do.
Joseph Anderson, I've got an RPM for him to Nebraska out of St. Louis.
Okay.
He's the edge player. But I think it's going to move quick. They've had some other visitors in this week. Marcus Easley, who we're going to have a recruit spotlight with. He's on an unofficial. He was at Georgia this weekend on an official. He's going to go to Oklahoma, Alabama, Tennessee, but he's in Nebraska right now for an unofficial visit. We'll talk to Marcus on the YouTube channel and on HuskerOnline this week. Sipple, one of the guys that we saw this week was Malik Esquera from Killian, Texas. He came out to the Mary Hardin Baylor satellite camp. He'll be on his official visit. Brian Munson just confirmed that Tuesday, June 13th.
Okay.
And then Braylon Prude will be here, who Nebraska offered last night as we're taping this show Wednesday. They set his official up with him last night. He's coming June 16th.
Yeah, that moved very quickly. It's not like he had a lot of big time offers. Who was the kid that was sitting in the stands? What was his name?
Esquera.
Esquera. That was an interesting scene. He wasn't working out at Mary Hardin Baylor, but his presence was very notable. Like,
that's common though. These satellite, there's always kind of a camp within the camp when you go to a satellite camp.
Yeah.
There's other, like you saw it in Houston. There were like those 4-star receivers that showed up for 2025 and
didn't work out.
They just kind of roam around and work the ropes a little bit and talk to people.
Namely the coaches.
They they paid to join the camp though. It wasn't like they were not a part of it. They just chose not to work out.
Yeah, they don't have to. Esquera falls under that category too. He doesn't really have to work out. He was there with his mom, just watching the coaches, and that's, I don't know. You guys have been around this stuff a lot more than I have. It's really beneficial to me to see that. It would be beneficial as a big time safety recruit to go watch Nebraska's coaches in action, because they are in action.
Mm-hmm.
They're out coaching.
Mm-hmm.
So I totally understand it.
What do you guys think of the week that Michael Burt had? Creighton Prep pulling in 3 Big Ten offers, including from Nebraska.
4 Big Ten offers.
4 Big Ten offers.
Illinois, Minnesota, Iowa, Nebraska.
Yeah. So
it's a pretty good week.
How surprising was that?
So here's the story on Michael Burt. As a junior, he had an okay year. He wasn't like, Creighton Prep had some other guys on the team, but he always projected. And I think at one point he always thought he was a baseball player. He's now realized he's a football player, a prospect.
Okay.
And when you see Michael Burt, we had him at the in-state tour, relatively unknown. We at HuskerOnline on 3, we had the only recruiting profile built for this guy for like the last 6 months. No one else has had a page built for this kid even. So he's not really on the map, but when you see him, you immediately like, wow.
What? Why?
He's all of 6'6". He's athletic. He was a 3-sport athlete at Creighton Prep, baseball, basketball, football. That's hard to do at a school like that. It's a good program. He's a good student. So that will be interesting. He was supposed to have been at Nebraska's camp Sunday, did not make it. Not anything bad. He just couldn't make it. He went to Iowa and then Minnesota. Offer. Creighton Prep will be at Nebraska's team camp, as will Elkhorn South. They'll have him on campus for 3 days.
When will that be?
Not this week, but the next week.
Okay, that's something to watch.
Yeah, the team camp, and I know Columbus Lakeview usually goes to that. Elkhorn South Prep, they've been regulars the last few years, so I'll be curious if all those teams are there again. But you would like their chances with Michael Burt. I think that's one that's going to work out. And so much gets made about Nebraska not being the first offer. Like, we got to get over that. Like, and
why do you say that?
This coaching staff's only been here for like 3 months, 4 months. It's kind of hard to
be first out of the gate on some guys because you haven't had the evaluation time, is what you're getting.
Yeah, when you haven't been able to see them.
Right.
Does it feel like the attention to Nebraska prospects is higher than maybe it used to be? Like these kind of under the radar guys that might not be the known commodities. like they're getting attention now. It seems at a much higher rate. And do you think that's because other schools are devoting more attention to scouting Nebraska and finding those guys, whereas Nebraska they just fall into Nebraska's lap and they would be the first offer?
I mean, some of it, you look at Kansas State, you have Connor Riley there. You have guys on that staff that know the area. You look at Kansas, you got Lance Leipold.
Yeah.
So you got the two Kansas
Lance gets
schools
up here a lot
with people. You got Iowa State, who's had a track record here the last few years.
Iowa's
always had a track record. So
comes over.
You've got 4 Power Fives. Illinois has kind of kicked the tires in Nebraska more. Minnesota has always kicked the tires, but they've never gotten anybody.
They got Avante. Oh, they didn't get.
They did not get.
They
Avante.
tried.
They tried to. Yeah.
Here's the deal, Rob. Here's what I think. It's part of the discussion is Nebraska right now. They're not getting the.
They're vulnerable.
They're not getting the high profile players. They're not. I mean, not what they want necessarily right now because they're not in a position to. So Nebraska itself might be putting a little more attention on some of these developmental players from around here. I think they have to. I think Sean's knows this too. They're in a very challenging time right now in Nebraska because of that, because of the losing has made them vulnerable. And they don't, it's harder to get those high end kids. So you really got to be smart about getting kids that maybe aren't being recruited by the Alabamas, Georgias, Oklahomas, Tennessees, etc. But they're good. You got to find them.
Guys, think about this.
That's what this trip was about in some way.
Guys that are recruiting haven't seen Nebraska in a bowl game since they were like in 5th grade, 6th grade. My daughter's in 3rd grade, going in 4th. I mean, and she's not going to remember like that kind of. I mean, so like that's what you're trying to sell. Like you don't have any postseason it's a whole nother show. But they did qualify for a bowl in 2020 and they voted not to go to a bowl.
Yeah, we don't need to do that.
Like that will just get me mad.
Twisting the knife.
Yeah, this is a happy show.
We're light on
June
sleep.
7th.
I don't need to get mad about because that record that you're seeing, everyone's like, oh, the longest. So it would have been over if they would have played in the bowl game.
There's challenges. They're going down to Texas and recruiting kids who don't even know what conference Nebraska's in. You know, it's true.
Well,
That's a fact.
And to that point, this I think further emphasizes the importance of this staff's strength of identifying talent, not just before everybody else, but at different positions down the road 3 to 4 years and see what they can be in the future as opposed to what they are right now.
I think that's more important than maybe ever here.
All right, when we come back, Abby Barmore will join us. We'll get an update on Nebraska volleyball in Brazil from Abby, and we'll take your questions in the mailbag next. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. And we're back here on the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washut. Let's welcome in Abby Barmore, who's still bitter at me for not letting her go to Brazil. But it was a very good trip, Abby, for the Nebraska volleyball team in Brazil. Give us a quick recap. How did it go out there for them?
Yeah, so they actually played 4 games. The first 3 were in a tournament, and they were against like under 19 teams. So they had some good players, but Nebraska dominated them, swept all of them. I don't even know if anyone scored 15 points in a set against Nebraska. So they did really good, and every single player played. They really mixed up the roster. And then yesterday, on Tuesday, they actually played Brazil's under 21 team. So that was a big game for them, and they were the best team that they played, kind of by far. Yeah, and they swept them. But the first game, they had to come back from like a big deficit. So that was really good for them to have to figure out how to do that and lean on each other. And then also the big thing I would say is who started for that game. And the setter for that was Bergen Riley. And she did really good. And
oh boy,
yeah,
True freshman.
Yeah, she's a true freshman.
Okay, we got a quarterback battle.
All right, well, let's get to the mailbag, Abby. Where are you starting us off at?
Okay, which positions are in trouble of a starter if a starter gets injured or not?
You know what's interesting about that question? Besides quarterback, which you guys correctly identified in the chat as the position that would be affected the most. Is there really a position that you feel like
center,
Ben Scott?
Well, Ethan Piper can fill in there. He can move in there seamlessly.
Ethan
Piper
seamlessly.
I mean, has he started?
What do you think the level of drop off between Ben Scott and Ethan Piper?
28 career starts for Ben Scott
at center.
Piper. I mean, I wouldn't be I wouldn't be overly concerned in the press box if it happened.
There were people saying Ben Scott was the best overall offensive lineman on the entire unit coming out of spring ball.
Well, there would be a drop off, but I don't think it would be an alarming drop off.
Okay.
Who else could you throw in there? Could you throw Turner Corcoran?
Ty Robinson.
No, at center. Oh,
I'm saying. I thought
yeah,
you were in the
yeah.
conversation.
Ty Robinson at center. Interesting.
Yeah. Well,
Nash Hutmacher to
the
set.
rumors are flying.
If you lost Ty Robinson,
Yeah.
That's a big one. I mean,
just the depth.
even Nash would be big.
yeah,
They
depth.
just don't have any veteran depth there.
Right.
Like
Okay.
MJ Sherman would be a hit, but they have. I do think Billy Kemp would be a hit because of the punt returns, and he's their number one receiver.
Mm-hmm.
He
He's
could
by
be the-
far their most productive wide receiver.
We'll see.
Marcus Washington has nowhere near the career productivity.
Billy
as
Kemp was
Billy
one of the
Beane.
all-time leading receivers.
Well, I
in
know
Virginia
Kemp's
history.
credentials, but there's a couple guys on that team. I mean, a guy just got eligible named Xavier Betts too. I mean, it wouldn't shock me if one of those other guys was their number one receiver, and it could be we could just be splitting hairs. Kemp maybe more catches, a couple of those other guys more yards, But I get what you're saying. They're going to go to Kemp a lot of it's going to be short type stuff. What do you call those routes?
Sticky routes.
Sticky routes. I mean, you'll see Kemp on a lot of sticky routes. He won't be the only one.
What about corner?
No,
What about,
I like him. They got
What
depth.
if Quentin Newsom went down?
They got depth.
options.
They got depth because you might think of Buford, for instance, as a safety, but he can play corner.
They refuse to label positions. Evan Cooper again said to me, "We have defensive backs, not positions," and the linebackers are the same way. And everybody in our crazy Nebraska media way, we want to identify every position and who's the backup nickel. And, our nutty Nebraska coverage.
Well, Sean, you are leading the.
I am leading the nutty, but the coaching staff is quick to always say,
No, you're right.
everybody plays every position. Like they kind of shut down the special features on, this guy's a certain, they want everybody to learn everything. So I do think that versatility will help. What do you got next, Abby?
What do you think of Scotty McCreery performing after Volleyball Day Nebraska?
Personally underwhelmed. I didn't even know who he was.
Okay,
until
interesting.
I heard that, and so looked it up. Whatever. It's not about the concert.
No.
It's about the volleyball day. And yeah, I mean, I think that's just kind of a bonus. But can you imagine if they would have gotten like
You too,
Foo Fighters? Yes.
Bono.
I mean, they're already 91 plus.
Yeah.
And that's with Scotty McCreery. It's
Then
impressive.
all of a sudden those like cheap tickets that, the cheap tickets are very inexpensive. There'd be a scalper's market.
Skyrocket.
Like if there was a legit concert tied in. I mean, when basketball would bring in, it was always interesting in those scrimmages you guys would do for basketball. They'd bring in some like big name, like rap artists. There probably a lot of people would come to PBA that have never been
Oh, absolutely.
to a Nebraska.
There were two very different crowds at those things. There's the people that are to watch the scrimmage or the workout, and there are the people there for the concert. You could see there's a pretty clear distinction.
That's good. You bring in new
Exactly.
folks. Yeah.
So you got people that had probably never watched Nebraska basketball in PBA, watching Nebraska
Yeah, you
basketball.
bring in
PBA.
another type of fan. and
New
that's good.
fans.
Yeah.
So maybe
So
that
what's
maybe
the
you get
guy's
some
name?
of that. Scotty
McCreery?
McCreery.
Will people all stay for the concert? Or is it, I mean, the match is quick. Like, do you think
With that many people, I'll bet you there's a lot that try to beat traffic.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to deal with filing out of Memorial Stadium. When's it end? Do you know? Like, what's the time frame on that?
Well, Nebraska's game starts at 7.
Oh, yeah,
so
so it's
they
gonna be
didn't even put an estimate on when Scotty would go on.
9:30?
And then
probably.
so there's going to
Yeah.
be like the stage setup and all that. So
It's
it's
on
gonna
a
be late
Wednesday.
show. Yeah.
No, the stage will be out there, right?
Yeah.
They'll have it all.
But you got to imagine there's going to be some sort of transition. There.
I mean, it's pretty. I think the way they have that map of it. I mean, it show it all kind of already pre-built into the field because the volleyball court on the football field, the small little fly.
Yeah.
Either way, it's going to be a late show. I'll bet you the crowd for the Nebraska match compared to the crowd for the concert is going to be less.
When it, I mean, I'm not
Far
gonna. I don't
less.
want to call the shot here, but I mean, they'll probably sweep UNO. I mean, they're
Yeah.
if
Have
they're
you done your
putting-
scouting report on UNO yet? Do you have a
They-
full-blown scouting report?
I do not have a full blown one, but they are actually a good team. And 2 years ago, when they played Nebraska, they took them to 5 sets.
That would be
that would be interesting, or the upset would be interesting.
Can you imagine
Talk
if they
about a late
lost that? Shit. Break the world record for women's sporting event.
They bring the
attendance
UNO
and-
Take an L.
volleyball coach up on the stage for the concert. This is our house.
Well, I'll tell you, you got to think like a coach. John has to think about that. He's got to get his athletes ready to roll. It's not just a party for them.
I can't imagine that team like just going through the motions on that stage. Like you could see like they're at home and it's against, what is considered a lesser opponent. On that thing, like they will not lose that game.
Maybe
That match. They will
UNO's
not
just
lose that match.
what if UNO's just really good in windy conditions?
They can play the elements.
Will John Cook
Just strangely
practice-
good with the wind blowing.
and this will be good stuff for Abby just leading up. Will they practice outside?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a very good
all,
question.
all of the teams will have one practice outside.
But I wonder if
They did
John would
before.
take his players outside for other. I would.
Would he have access to like go on the field and like do
Well,
drills like literally on the Memorial
Well,
Stadium
not
field?
with a field trip because they're gonna have the court down.
Yeah.
No.
But I'm just like for like adjusting to the ball in that stadium
Oh.
with this.
Yeah,
all
they
the
could
things
just be
surrounding-
passing.
They're gonna
out
be
there.
under the lights. Well, maybe not under the lights. It'll be bright enough.
Any
but-
Nebraska football coach would tell you the wind swirls in that place.
And the serving marks are gonna be hard to hit.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Really hard. I mean,
That's very. I think it's
Fascinating.
an intriguing
Yeah.
conversation.
and in volleyball, like it's not just like serve the ball wherever. I mean, it's
Carly, for Carly, it would.
It's an exact point, right, Abby?
Yeah.
If you're an inch or two off, like you're not doing. I mean, they want your serve like where they tell you every time.
Yeah, before every serve, John Cook has a big board that he has, and he puts his hand behind it, has a number on it, and then each number has its own zone.
Hmm.
So that's where they're expected to serve.
This is Sean like doing this Karch Karai over there.
All right, we got time for one final question.
Okay, our last one. You guys have been to a lot of camps over the years in Lincoln and also satellite camps. So what is the most talented camp you've been to, and what has been your wildest experience at a camp?
Sean.
FIU, Butch Davis, Adidas camp tour. I mean, there was like 1,000 kids there, and I'm not
Whoa.
exaggerating.
Whoa.
And they had jerseys on with numbers, and it was, I remember Greg and Nate Klaus. We were just like, this is the best collection of kids we've ever seen. But Butch did not want to give any of the other Adidas schools the roster, so nobody had a roster. And I mean, you're just watching 4-4, 4-4, 4-5 running right by you everywhere. And Mike
amazing.
Riley comes up to me and he goes, God, Sean, there's a lot of kids here. It'd be nice though to know who they are. And Butch wanted to recruit all those guys to FIU. So, he doesn't want to give away any of these kids' names to the other Adidas schools that could get them out of Miami at that time to go. And he was really protective. Like there were some office staffers that traveled with Nebraska. Todd McShane, who's now at Northwestern with Pat Fitzgerald, he couldn't go into the camp. He could travel with them, but couldn't go in the camp. So he's like, I'm going to go hang out in the FIU offices. Butch kicked him out of the offices. He goes, you can't be up here. You got to get out of here.
Wow, Butch.
He was, and he,
That's the right move, by the way. I wouldn't want an opposing coach hanging in my office.
and then
Seriously,
then he roasted Shenander. I'll never forget this. Like he goes
Butch
up to,
did?
he goes, hey, you gonna coach, or are you just gonna be one of those guys that stands around in the back? And Shenander goes, I'll coach. Where do you want me, coach? Tell me where to go. And like it was that was an
you saw an interesting day. There,
Yeah,
Sean.
I mean, there was a lot of talent. And then Ken Dorsey,
Uh-huh.
who's now an NFL offensive coordinator,
Mhm.
he was
Bills.
like the director of facilities at FIU. And so he led us in around the facility. It was me, Nate, Greg, and Ken Dorsey. And he's walking us around. I'm like, this is the guy that pretty much changed the trajectory of Nebraska's program with that Rose Bowl performance.
Oh, yeah, it might have changed before then
a little bit before, but
A little bit. I mean, Colorado.
those Miami ones are always,
That was Ken Dorsey leading you around?
yeah.
I'll be darned.
It's got to be.
Sean, I'm not going to top that.
Yeah. But I mean, as far as most talent I've ever seen at a camp, it has to be that Friday Night Lights camp back in 2017. Mike Parsons,
Oh,
Buki, who else? Max Dugan was there.
yeah.
I mean, like, just go down the list.
Wasn't
impressive.
Robert Griffin's son there too from the Big Ten?
Howard Griffin.
Yeah,
Yep,
not
he
Robert
was there.
Howard Griffin.
And a bunch of like Marcus Washington was there.
Yep.
Well, there was like
Sure.
8,000 fans at the camp.
Yeah,
about
I mean
that?
that was a spectacle.
Well, and Parsons was catching passes
He was
like a
unbelievable.
receiver, right?
That was the most impressive high school athlete I've ever seen.
Really?
Yeah.
He's a linebacker for those the uninitiated. This is Micah Parsons, the linebacker who was catching passes like a wide receiver.
Burning 4-star cornerbacks off the line, catching touchdowns.
So he's doing pretty good.
Mike Riley may not have won a lot of games here, but those camps were really good. I mean,
Yeah, he won. He started that conversation about winning the offseason, I thought.
Mhm.
People bring that up on the board a lot. I think that's where it really started
Yeah, that's what
with Riley.
the level of hype
Yeah.
coming out of that event was unbelievable.
Right.
Because you actually thought Nebraska might get some of these guys. Well, they didn't. They didn't get any of them.
a lot of bridesmaids.
But
It was fun at the time. It was fun at the time.
Not, and even in some cases, not even making the groom's party. You're like an usher at the wedding. I mean,
Yeah.
damn it. But it was fun.
You're the guy that helps haul equipment in and out of the reception.
bridal attendants. All right. When we come back, we'll close the show. More on Xavier Betts, more
Yes.
on basketball, and we'll give a quick thought on Will Bolt's move, firing or parting ways with Jeff Christie. That's next. You're listening to the Husker Online Show. Final segment here of the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Watchett. Thanks again to Abby Barmore for joining us on the mailbag. But let's get into Xavier Betts because, a couple of the other news notes we learned. Number one, Xavier Betts fully eligible, had to take a load of credits to get eligible and passed them all. No questions asked. And then Arik Gilbert, no update with him, but don't freak out. Like it's a process. And I think,
Well, a couple things, Sean. Betts, Damon Benning on Twitter said it was 21 hours he had to pass. Betts, according to Garrett McGuire, who gushed about Xavier Betts, never missed a meeting, during spring ball, never missed a practice. Now, that's different. That's different than the Xavier Betts we knew before he left the program in March of 2022, right? He did miss practices. I think meetings were probably an issue, but didn't miss practice, didn't miss meetings. Looked good. I thought he looked good in the spring game. He was in great shape, physical condition. So that's a great story. And he's going to be a major factor for this team. I imagine he'll be a starter, is what I would think.
They certainly have a chance.
Yeah.
I mean, he's firmly in the top 4 discussion right now.
Sure.
And you can make a strong case to be top 3.
Yeah. I 100% agree. You're talking about Billy Kemp.
100%.
Yeah, 100. Marcus Washington.
Yeah.
And
And then
Xavier.
Isaiah Garcia Castaneda would be the top competition for that 3rd spot.
Yeah, and if you're talking about the top just 4 or 5
Right now,
guys
at
overall,
least.
I'm putting Fedoni in the conversation, throw a tight end in there.
They like Ty Hahn. He
Okay.
could fight for some snaps.
Okay.
I mean, that's another guy that we don't mention.
Now, the important thing to mention on Arik Gilbert is this. They only filed the waiver in the last 3 weeks. So it's not like they filed the waiver months ago and are waiting. They're not. That's not the case. They were very intent on filing a very detailed waiver. It's not just something you write a few paragraphs and send it to the NCAA. I'm sure it's very well thought out. So it hasn't been a long wait. The waiver just went in a few weeks ago. Now they're waiting.
Yeah, I know with basketball, they've had guys where they've needed waivers, and you have to be so meticulous
Yes.
with those deals. And there's no rush to it because once the waiver's in,
Mhm.
you're done. And then it's just a matter of time for when the NCAA gets around to it. But as long as you do it right, you got a high chance of getting it approved.
There
But
you
if you
go.
screw something up,
Right.
then you're cooked.
Right. And I think with Gilbert, it's, I imagine it's fairly involved. I mean, just my familiarity with his background would suggest it's probably pretty involved.
All right, basketball, Robin. A lot of ground you want to cover here.
Yep.
Keisei Tominaga back, which we last week knew was going to probably be the case, but a lot of other kind of moving parts with the roster.
Yeah, it became official a week ago, last Wednesday night. So, like you said, not unexpected, but certainly good news for Nebraska just because he's going to be a key part of everything they do. He's going off to Japan now to compete with the Japanese national team at the FIBA World Cup this summer. So it's unfortunate from Nebraska's side to not have a guy that's going to be so critical in what you do to not be here all summer. He's going to miss the Spain trip. He's going to miss all summer workouts, and he might not even be back in Lincoln until after the start of the fall semester, depending on how well Japan does in the tournament. So, but that's what are you going to tell him, not to go represent his country at like one of the biggest stages in the world? So yeah, so it's good news is he's sticking around, he's coming back. Bad news is he might not be here until early September. Now, Nebraska has 2 open scholarships officially to fill, and they're well on their way towards filling those. The big one is now you can just call him Mongolian Mike. Okay, he's a 6'8" transfer from Dayton, was a freshman last year at Dayton. He's the first Division I basketball player from Mongolia. So kind of a little bit of history there. His last name is here we go, Sharuv Jumps. That's the only way I'm going to try it. Either way, he's a very interesting player in that he was a 4-star recruit out of high school. He was, before he even arrived at Dayton, was being talked about as a potential NBA draft pick. But he struggled last year. He didn't. I mean, his numbers are mediocre at best. He was inconsistent, never got a shot going, and just was not a fit there. So he hits the transfer portal. And as of taping, he's down to Nebraska, Memphis, and San Francisco. What I've heard is going to be Nebraska, San Francisco. Like those are the top 2. And the reason San Francisco is involved there is they do a really good job in recruiting internationally. Like that's kind of where they hang their hat. So they've got a lot of connections there with the international basketball community, but so does Nebraska. And so we're waiting word if there's going to be a visit with sometime this week. But I think if they get him on campus, they're going to have a strong case. They see him as one of those big point guards, like a Delano Banton, Sam Griesel type. He is 6'8", but he's an extremely good facilitator. So that all being said, that's certainly one to watch. The other one would be Simeon Wilcher. He's a familiar name, younger brother of CJ Wilcher, current Husker, former 5-star recruit to Roselle Catholic. And so every team in the country is going to be looking for him. He'll have G League opportunities. He'll have overtime elite opportunities. He just got his release today on Wednesday. So, I think there's no rush with this decision, but Nebraska has a couple wild cards. They got CJ, and those 2 are extremely close. It's like a Bryce and Trey McGowan's type thing.
This could get interesting.
They also have Jamarcus Lawrence, who's like Simeon's best friend and former high school teammate at Roselle Catholic. So
what position we talking about here?
Point guard. Point guard. Former top 10 rated point guard.
Hold on.
But again, this is a player that was being recruited by everybody, and he could go straight to the G League if he wanted to. So we'll see what's going on with that. But with 2 open spots, pretty convenient timing for Nebraska to have some scholarships to play with those 2 guys, 2 potential NBA players now on the market.
Yeah, Simeon.
There's a chance.
There's a chance. I don't know. I mean, obviously a much better chance with Mongolian Mike and the fact that Nebraska's already in the top 3. But Wilcher is interesting, man.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Nebraska can't compete with a lot of different things, but they got CJ and they got Jamarcus. And they got the fact that Wilcher's family loves Nebraska. They love Hoiberg.
Yeah, I just don't think you count Nebraska out of that discussion at all. I don't.
Keep an eye.
All right. Finally, big changes in Nebraska baseball. Will Bolt shakes things up with his staff. Pitching coach Jeff Christie, former Husker, Lincoln Southeast product, parting ways. Mutually parting ways is, as I believe how the announcement read, with Will Bolt, but let's call it what it was. I mean, they made a move, and Nebraska failed to make the regionals. And you can say a number of reasons why they didn't make the regionals, but Will Bolt makes a move on his staff, and I think now the question is Rob Childress going to be elevated back to the pitching coach? Would he want to be the pitching coach again? What does Will Bolt do with that?
It's a layered conversation. First of all, this could not have been easy for Will Bolt. That's my guess. I don't know. I mean, maybe it was. I doubt it though. He and Christie were teammates on the 2005 College World Series team at Nebraska. They were together here since 2019. They were also together with Rob at Texas I. I mean, this is a tight crew. This is an example of business. This is not, I mean, they're friends, I'm sure. They're close, but it's business. This couldn't have been easy for Will. And I don't know that I wonder if it, everybody's just sort of assuming that Rob would take this pitching coach job, but what you have to think about is, first of all, Rob Childress, he wouldn't be the boss. He'd be working for Will. And second of all, now he's back on the road. He's back on the fire. He's on the road. In that position, you're going to be on the road a lot. The pressure ramps up. Does Rob want that right now?
He's also being considered for some head coaching jobs too.
Well, their door closed on a few that are
Wichita State
and Missouri.
and
are
Missouri
closed.
now. So,
But Alabama.
yeah, some people
If you
are
wanna jump
sort
into
of
that.
surmising, and there's a lot of assumptions going on right now that the door closed on a few jobs. So now that's why Will made the move now. Door closed on a couple jobs for Rob. Okay, let's just go ahead and do this. Maybe that's what's going on.
Yeah, it will be. I mean, if he could pull off getting Rob Childress to be his pitching coach, that'd be quite a coup.
It sure would. I mean, Rob, that's very interesting because Rob could be a head coach, right? It's a really interesting story for sure. And I would say this on behalf of Christy. You kind of said it, Sean. I mean, pitching wasn't that bad. They're a top 3 staff in the Big Ten the last couple of years. They didn't have the depth, as Sean pointed out a few times yesterday on the road. We got into it a lot of bit. They came up short in the midweek a lot, and that hurt them.
And those 5 or 6 midweek losses cost them the region.
No doubt about that. And that's a pitching depth issue. So they came up a little short or significantly short on depth. And also their Sunday starter job was muddled. That all does fall back on the pitching coach.
All right. Well, we've got a full weekend of camp coverage on the site. There'll be camps all weekend in Lincoln. So we'll have coverage of that. And then more official visitors coming up next weekend, as well as midweek visitors. Marquise Easley, we'll have a recruit spotlight posted on him as well. Check that out on the YouTube and the podcast channel. Follow, subscribe to us here on the Husker Online YouTube channel page. We got a great deal going on, $1 for 3 months of access to HuskerOnline.com, or right now, limited time offer, 50% off a sub right now, $49.99 for an entire year of HuskerOnline.com. Thanks again for joining us here. Make sure you log on to HuskerOnline.com.